Hello, everyone. Happy Thursday. Hope that you are having a wonderful afternoon. Maybe you're having a great morning. Maybe you're having a great evening, depending on where you are in the country. I hope that everybody's having an incredible day. I know that I am. Every single day that we can wake up, that we're happy, we're healthy, and we have another opportunity to be great. It is always a great day. Thank you so much, everyone, for showing today. Welcome back if you've been here before, and hey, welcome if this is the first time that you're tuning in into a live stream in what you can expect out of solar, right? Essentially, this was started for us to be able to break through the noise, see through the smoke, and to understand what solar actually means for you. So I appreciate anyone that is taking the time to, taking the time out of their day to basically sit and chat with me a little bit about, their home, what solar means for them, and ultimately what is solar and how is solar going to benefit in their specific situation. So just a little bit about myself. Again, my name is Will Zapata. I've had the pleasure of helping families convert their home from, archaic, maybe fossil fuel energy into solar energy for the last 10 years. Not only have I had the pleasure of working here locally in Rhode Island, but I've also been able to work in Massachusetts, Connecticut, Maine, New Hampshire, Florida, California, Texas. I've done it all, right? Looking to be able to continue my service and be able to help out more families across the country basically break themselves free from the grip of the utility company, right? Solar is able to provide us with an incredible opportunity to free ourselves from the utility company, being able to, control how much we pay for our electricity, and basically, essentially, being able to protect ourselves from future inflation when it comes to solar. If you haven't seen some of our previous videos, please go back and check them out. Again, this is going to be a live series where we do this every single week, and the whole idea is for us to be able to, freely ask questions, get a better understanding as to how solar work, and then see if it's something that would apply for your home. Basically, for today, I want to go through the topic as to what we can expect about solar, right? I know that, maybe we have a certain understanding as to, we think, hey, how does solar work? Maybe we think it works one way, but really it doesn't. But what can we actually expect from solar? Right. So the first thing is usually the way that it happens, either maybe we were told by a friend, maybe we looked at a utility bill that was extremely high and we're looking for some alternatives when it comes to how can we power our home, right? Maybe we went online and we saw something that piqued our interest, right? And then you got a phone call, maybe somebody knocked on your door and piqued your interest about solar, and you set up a consultation, right? As I've explained already before in our previous videos, I highly recommend that you take your time when it comes to choosing the right partner for you when it comes to converting your home over into solar, right? Part of the consultation, there are a couple of things that you want to look for, right? The first thing, I say this all the time, is what is the worthiness of the person that you're speaking with, right? Are they just trying to sell you a deal and maybe make some commission? Are they actually informative? Are they just giving you some information that maybe it sounds too good to be true? In my 10 years of helping families, convert their home over into solar, I've heard it all, right? I've even heard maybe solar will work at night, right? But the way that solar works, right, it is powered by the sun, so we do need to make sure that we're getting a ton of sun exposure. We need to make sure that we're able to maximize our production when it comes to renewable energy. And we need to make sure that, hey, our roof is in good standing to be able to qualify, to be able to convert their home into solar, right? In your consultation, first of all, you want to educate yourself before anyone meets there. Figure out how many kilowatts that you're consuming. You can definitely take a look at your utility bill, right? And certain parts it has the months listed out as to how many kilowatts you're consuming per month. I would suggest, hey, add the last 12 months to get an idea as to how much power you need. If you really want to get a good example, hey, maybe you even go into 18 months, maybe you go into the last 3 years as to what your consumption has been. That way you can actually get a real average of what your utility usage and your consumption looks like, right? Once you've gone ahead, you want to make sure that, hey, take a look at, does your house actually get a ton of sun, right? Like, hey, you may have some trees that are in your home that might be causing some shade. Take an opportunity throughout the day before your consultation, right, to look at your look at your roof. See how much sun exposure you're getting, right? Believe it or not, some homes don't qualify for solar. It might be due to a bad roof, due to, too much shade on the property. And those are the kind of things that you want to take into account before your consultation, right? The other thing is that with the internet now, we have a lot of information out there. Maybe you can just Google, maybe you can just YouTube the different kind of solar programs that could be available to you and get a better understanding before you even meet with the consultant in order to, hey, see what program might work for you, what program you need more information on, what program maybe like you're just not understanding and you need to get deeper into. The other thing is make sure that you're researching the company that you're going to sit with, right? I'm sure that there's a lot of great companies out there and you might sit down with a great company, but the rep that you're sitting down with, maybe they're giving you some information that is not exactly clear, right? So that's why you want to at least get the opportunity to understand what your electrical needs are. That way you can come with the right questions, right? And I would suggest having a minimum of 10 questions, right? Hey, how long have you been in business? Have you been able to help out any of my neighbors? What is my out of pocket expense? How much is my system producing? What happens if I need a new re-roof? Hey, what happens if I need an electrical panel upgrade? Hey, maybe you're retired, maybe you're not. Those things might vary as to what program you can qualify for, right? Like, hey, are you guys licensed and insured, right? Believe it or not, you'd be surprised how many companies are not licensed and insured, right? What do their warranties look like, right? Do they have any other installations in the area that you can take a look at? What kind of panels are they using? And I can go on and on as to the kind of questions that you may want to ask before or have ready before the sales rep comes to your home, right, and provides you with the information as to how you can convert your home to solar, right? During the consultation, as I mentioned, right, make sure that it's a lot of question asking. You want to make sure that you're digging deep into, what kind of programs are available, what kind of production do you need, right? Like, how long does it take for their system to turn on? Because sometimes we think, okay, well, I got my system installed and that's it. But it's not, right? Every utility company in every area, even, let's say, for example, Eversource is located in Massachusetts, but they're also located in Connecticut. They might work completely different, right? So, like, what is their timelines when it comes to getting your system turned on, right? And what can you expect when it comes to, hey, once my system is turned on, what am I going to be looking for, right? Those are the kind of questions that you want to ask. You want to make sure that you get as clear as possible when it comes to, hey, I'm going to have this on my roof. It's going to be there, for the next 25 plus years. I want to make sure that I understand, what to expect out of solar year 1, year 2, year 10, year 15, year 20, right? Next, it's going to be basically, hey, we're going to go into designing your system. So what tends to happen is we're going to look at how much electricity you are consuming inside the house. Then we're going to take a look at as to how much electricity your system is producing. That's going to be very important, especially if you're looking to be able to do what we call a net metering or an offset on your utility bill, right? For example, if you're thinking about going solar, right, you might, hey, I might use 100 hours of electricity, but I might only produce 80 hours. That means that the other 20 remaining hours, that's going to come from the utility company. And that should be understood and that should be thoroughly explained to you, because you might be thinking, well, I'm going to not have an electric bill, but that may not be the case. You may end up, getting an electric bill, maybe an offset. You may end up producing more energy than what you consume, and you want to make sure that you take into account when the design is being made for you, right? Usually, my rule of thumb is I want to be able to produce anywhere between 5 to, even depending on what program it is, I want to produce anywhere between 5 and 20% above what I am consuming. The other thing you want to take into account is like, hey, do I plan on changing my consumption? Sometimes we may end up using more power than we're currently consuming. Sometimes, we might end up getting an electric vehicle that we hadn't thought of, right? And you want to take that into account because if you have an electric vehicle, well, your electric consumption is going to be completely different, right? So definitely take that into account, guys. Make sure that you're understanding that what your product or what your consumption is today and what is your consumption going to be in the future. Now, the other part when it comes to the assessment is, hey, do you need an electrical panel upgrade? Are you going to need a re-roof? Now, some of these things may not be known until an expert does a site visit. You have your consultation with the solar expert, and then there's a site visit engineer that's going to stop by. They're going to take a look at the roof. They're going to take a look at the rafters. They're going to take a look at the life of the shingles, basically to determine if your home, needs any upgrades. Especially here in New England, more and more homes are going to need an electrical panel upgrade, right? You want to make sure that, hey, maybe you're going from 100 amp to 200 amp, right? Maybe you need to have some forced or some extra reinforcement in your roof, that you need to make sure that that is clearly outlined, right? Because that might vary what your monthly amount would be with solar. Okay, and those are all things that, again, you can take a look at for yourself. I would double and triple qualify when it comes to once the site surveyor stops by, right? Just to make sure, hey, those might be additional cost that's added to the project that maybe you weren't anticipated, but maybe in some cases you can actually use solar to facilitate those changes, right? I've been able to help out countless families, get a re-roof, get an electrical panel upgrade simply by converting into solar. Every case is different. So again, just because you're going solar, it doesn't mean that your home is going to qualify for these upgrades. But I would definitely take the opportunity to at least look and see if it's an option for you. Now let's just say, hey, everything looks good, everything makes sense, you feel comfortable, you've been able to move forward. The next part is going to be paperwork. Typically what involves, and every company might vary, but for the most part, you're going to sign, depending on whether it's a loan or a power purchase agreement, there's that document. Then there's the install agreement, right? That means the installer is agreeing to do the work. And then you're going to have something called, ICX or interconnection. And that's basically the application that goes to the utility company. The utility company does have to approve your system in order to make sure that the system that is being proposed, it is going to be allowed to get installed when it comes to it, right? So, if you're like, hey, I want to get the biggest system possible, I have a lot of roof space, I get a lot of sun exposure, that might be a lofty goal, but ultimately the utility company is going to be the one to decide whether you can actually get that system installed, right? So definitely make sure to take a look at that. Make sure that you're aware. Again, make sure that the expert explains to you, what are the regulations, what are the caps when it comes to how much of an offset you can get, right? Next, once that happens, we're going to move into engineering. And basically what that means is that the site surveyor that stopped by, he took a bunch of pictures, right? And he's going to submit that to his engineering team to make sure that the roof can handle the additional weight, to make sure that your electrical panel is going to be within code because it is going to be inspected, to make sure that, hey, there's no other upgrades that's needed in your home, right? We want to make sure that the production is correct because, believe it or not, the production can change, right? Once they actually do the visit, maybe that tree that wasn't on Google Maps is there now. Maybe that tree is taller. Maybe, that tree is no longer there and now your production has changed. Those are all things that you want to take into account, right? From there, there's going to be a permitting process. And what tends to happen is, depending on the stamp of approval from the engineering team, they're going to go ahead and approve to make sure that, hey, you can get your system installed. They're going to ask for permits. Please make sure that you're confirming that whoever is doing your installation does have the permits. I can't tell you how many times I ran into families that have gone solar and a permit was never pulled, right? They're trying to get the job done quickly, but it's like you're skipping steps, and it ends up hurting them in the long run because if the permit company says no, well, maybe they have to remove a panel because it wasn't allowed, or maybe they have to change certain things that was not anticipated, and it ends up being more work both for you and the company that's doing the installation. Plus, if a company is willing to skip, steps and not do everything correctly, I probably would shy away from them or, hey, take precaution when it comes to them doing that because it might mean if they're willing to skip steps in the permitting or in the design process, what else have they not skipped steps in, right? Make sure, again, check your permits. Make sure that you're able to, do your due diligence before you meet with the consultant. Make sure that, you're checking your production or your consumption, both, to make sure that they're matching, right? Make sure that it's a good fit before, you move on into the permitting process and, you start to, the company spends money on getting the permits and things of that nature, right? Now, once you've gotten the permits, everything is good, you like the engineering, you like the design, finally the day has come for installation. And depending on where you are in the country, this can be, 30 days, and this can be, 90 plus days, right? Depending on where you are in the country, because every permitting department, every city works completely different, right? Sometimes they have to do certain things that other permits or other cities don't require, and you just want to be aware of that because that might change the timeline as to what it looks like whenever you are thinking about going solar. Now you finally got your installation date, right? They called you. They're like, hey, Mr. Homeowner, we're here to schedule your installation. Typically, it's going to be 1 to 2 days, right? The way that it works is that, usually depending on the size of the system, they can have it done in all in one day, or they may have to do the racking first. Maybe they have to do some kind of upgrades in the home, depending on what happened during the scope of work. And then, they're going to add the panels on the second day. Usually, if you have a system that's bigger than 10 kilowatts, that's going to take a day or two, right? Most likely it's going to take 2 days because they have to do the racking and then they have to do the panels and they have to spend a couple of hours doing the electrical connection. So just be aware of that, right? Depending on who your installer is, they might do it back-to-back installations. They might do, it might take a week apart. Some areas might require a mid installation inspection, so they won't let the install company finish the installation until they've done some kind of inspection. And those are all things that you want to be clear on because the last thing that you want is like, hey, they did the panels, they did the racking on my roof. Right now it looks like I have train tracks on my roof, but where are the panels, right? Don't worry. Typically in those cases, it's because there is a midday inspection. One of the cities that I can think of off the top of my head is Brockton. Make you do a mid inspection, a mid installation inspection. Other cities are requiring that more and more to make sure that everybody's up to code when it comes to installing solar on your home, right? So now that let's say your installation is finished, right? You got everything all set. Are you ready to go solar? Sure, you've done the hard work. Most of it has been done, but there still has to be the point of activating the system. The way that happens is typically there are 2 inspections, right? And this is why working with a reputable company is very important because if they're willing to skip steps, that means that the process of activating your system is going to take a lot longer, right? And the whole goal is, especially if you're getting, your system installed maybe spring and summertime, you want to maximize the amount of sun hours that you got, right? Because if for whatever reason, it takes longer than anticipated and you get your system turned on in the wintertime, well, you're not going to be able to optimize what your production is on the home. And we want to make sure, if you remember from our last videos, that, we optimize the summertime because solar usually has a 1 to 2 year turnaround when you've been able to build up enough production to offset your utility bill. It may not eliminate it, but at least you can get a bigger offset if you're able to take advantage of the summer months, right? So usually there's 2 inspections that happens when it comes to getting your system turned on, which is the electrical inspection and the built-in inspection. Every inspector is differently. Every inspector is different. Every inspector from every city might operate different. You might be able to get something easily passed in one city, but maybe you have to do a couple of more steps in another city. Again, that's why it is very important for you to learn what the process is during the activation of your system. Now, finally, panels are on the roof. You were able to pass inspection. Everything is good. You're finally ready to get PTO'd, which means, hey, I got permission to operate. Basically, that means that the utility company has recognized your installation. Now, whatever production your system gets, you're going to be able to now offset those credit towards the utility company, which means that, hey, if you're producing 100 hours and as you produce, 20, 40, 60, 80 hours, 100 hours, maybe even more of electricity, that is going to go ahead and offset what you have to pay to the utility company. Remember, every area will vary, so please make sure that you do your due diligence to make sure that, hey, am I gonna get a one-to-one credit when it comes to my production? Am I, getting something where maybe in California it's not a one-to-one credit, so I need to have a battery, so then that way during peak hours I can make sure to use the power from the battery. These are things that are going to be important when it comes to converting your home into solar energy, right? Now, what happens is once your system is up and running, you got a new meter, panels are on the roof. Now your electricity rate goes down, right? Your panels went up, your electric bill will go down, typically, right? That's why it's important. You want to make sure that, hey, you're getting enough production to offset your consumption. You want to make sure that you took into account any changes that you might make, right? Because every home is different and you want to be able to maximize the roof space that you have. Okay? Now, one of the biggest questions that, people have as concerns is like, hey, is this going to damage my roof? 9 out of 10 times your roof is going to be in great condition, right? You're going to be able to get your system installed without any damage to the roof. The reason why I said 9 out of 10 times is because this is a construction project nonetheless. That's why making sure that you have a reputable company that's, has a proven track record is very important. Typically, most installers will have a warranty on their roof of 5 to 10 years, depending on where you are, right? So you want to make sure that, hey, your roof is in good condition. If they did any damage, report it right away because it is important to make sure that they get that fixed. Most installation companies are not looking to damage their roof because that's going to be a bigger cost for them, and they already have thin margins, so they need to make sure that they're doing their work correctly. But it's also incumbent on homeowners to make sure that they're going with the right party. They're going with a party that has a good reputation, that has done good work before. Okay, so I hope that you guys were able to find this extremely helpful when it comes to how do I convert my home to solar? What are the things that I've already, what are the things that I should look into? What are the questions that I should ask, right? Feel free to drop a message, send us a message or, drop a like or, reach out to us if you want to get more in-depth information when it comes to, hey, will my home qualify for solar? What is that change going to look like? And ultimately, does this even make sense, right? Solar is a great opportunity for a lot of families, especially with the cost of electricity going up, especially as we're looking for energy independence, right? Solar is a great option. It just has to be done the right way. So make sure that you're taking your time. Make sure that you're asking a lot of questions, right? And make sure that, hey, you're doing your research, right? Get many opinions, many options, many quotes, whatever makes you feel comfortable with making that decision. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me. Again, my name is Will Zapata. I've been able to help out hundreds of families convert their home over into solar, right? So I've seen the good, the bad, and the ugly when it comes to renewable energy. But at the end of the day, as long as you take your time, as long as you do your research, and as long as you're fully equipped, because this is what this channel is for us to equip ourselves with the tools needed, your home will be a great candidate for solar. So thank you guys so much. Please enjoy the rest of your day, and I hope everyone has a great rest of their evening. Take care.